This
But
conference will now be recorded.
I wonder if should we take roll just so we know, that all the sites are represented. Could you do that?
Sure. Let me get my little. So from Duke. Let's see.
Hi, from Duke, we have Falayan, Yasmin, and Paige.
Okay. Thank you. From Northwestern. Who do we have on?
Sylvian Puja, Burma.
Okay. And I see we have Mary from Iowa. North Shore.
Yeah, hi Pooja here.
Okay. U of M.
Yes, we have Linda, Sarah, and Ashley.
Okay, great. How about University of Washington? Do we have anyone from University of Washington?
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. There you go. It's all yours.
All right. So my name is Kate Bradley. For those of you I haven't, probably met everybody. I'm the one of the PIs here at the University of Iowa, and I'm kind of the leader for this Project C. I'm gonna show a couple slides and then we'll just go to our manual of operations. But I'm here also. This mobile tracker study we're kind of administering with our mobile device unit. I know I'm never getting the name right, but Shelby Francis is the kind of manager. Why don't you introduce yourself, actually, because I also won't have your title right.
Hi, so I'm Shelby Francis, also at the University of Iowa. I am kind of the operations director for the mobile technology lab here, and my PhD was also in physical activity measurement. So this project is really in my wheelhouse. So what our group does is we try to help researchers collect data remotely from patients so that patients don't always have to come in for every single visit or, be contacted directly to collect data. So that's kind of, we try to collect things remotely and virtually from people out in the real world.
Right. So we had the, great opportunity to collaborate with Shelby and the other members of her group here at Iowa to do this protocol because they had the expertise in using these kind of remote methods to obtain data from research participants or patients. And so they've done studies kind of, somewhat similar in other areas, so not focused on lower urinary tract symptoms. So it's been kind of fun to collaborate with them and bring this project to LURN, and it's really exciting that we're about to launch it. So today, in the next hour, we're just going to go through the training specific to this project. And I probably will have trouble seeing the chat while I'm talking, but if you want to put questions there, and then actually Shelby's going to do more talking once we get into the details, and then I could try to monitor the chat and interrupt if we think it would be helpful. I'm fine with people asking a question as we go along because I do want you guys to understand it, and or I'll try to remember this. Maybe we can stop as we go through it and ask at that time, if you have questions about the sections that we've just talked about. So, so can you see my slide here? Okay. Yeah. So just as a very brief reminder, this is just one of multiple projects within our, greater LURN observational study that's focusing specifically on two different aspects of people's lives and how that relates to their lower urinary tract symptoms, specifically urgency problems this time. So those two areas are physical activity and sleep quality. And the Fitbit devices give us this really interesting and kind of great way of obtaining a lot of information about people's lifestyles related to physical activity and sleep without the participant having to do very much. So, they have to wear the tracker and make sure it's charged. But otherwise, the great thing is that we passively get all of this data, and we can hopefully really learn something that's important about, how men and women with urgency might differ from people without urgency in terms of their sleep and their physical activity, and also among people with urgency, if they have incontinence or not. Does that mean they have different, is that related to the type of physical activity they do or their sleep quality? And we hope that this is going to really help us, in the end, better understand our patients with urgency and be able to, and eventually get them better treatment. So I'm going to go forward. The other thing that we're looking at specifically is we're trying to figure out if this is a way we can track nocturia. I mean, a lot of our participants who have urgency have very bothersome nighttime wakening. They have to get up to urinate a lot at night, and that can often be the most bothersome symptom in some patients. And it might be that in the future we could use trackers to monitor that symptom when we're testing different treatments. And so this is a second aim that's kind of focused on, can we just figure out using the tracker how often they're getting up at night to urinate? And as you know, this is a protocol or a project that goes concurrently with a larger observational study. And we're basically have the same inclusion criteria. The only difference is that the participant has to have consistent sleep cycles. And so we'll look at that question, the one separate eligibility question, in a second. And we're going to give them the device. So this is kind of this is their compensation for participating in this particular project. I think that people will be interested in that. They can, when they're done with the study, they can keep using it, and as long as they'd like, they could give it to another family member who might want a tracker when they're done with the study. And urgency subjects, basically, when we enroll them, will be encouraged to wear that tracker all the time for 2 weeks at baseline, and then again 3 months. We'd actually like them to wear it all the time, but specifically it's most important during those 2 weeks. That's where we're focusing our data collection for our aims. And then for controls, they really only have to wear the device for 2 weeks, and then they're done and they get to keep the device. So I think that might be, a nice way to encourage participation. So this slide just says basically what I mentioned. We think it would be great if they could wear the device while they're doing the bladder diary, when they're enrolled, if they haven't already done their baseline diary, and also at 3 months. And while they're wearing the device, they're going to get that text once a day. We hope they would respond to that with the number of times that they woke up the previous night to urinate. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go through about these text reminders that they'll get. And I just wanted to remind you about the sample size before we go to the manual of operations. So overall, we're enrolling 200 people into this project, including 150 of our urgency participants and 50 controls. So when you divide that up among all of the 6 sites, that means about 25 urgency participants, both men and women, and 9 controls. We do want to kind of match those controls, both by gender or sex, and just loosely by age, similar to how we're doing in some of the other projects. And I think the DCC will be helping us as we go through by showing us, these enrollment tables that'll show how many participants that we've enrolled as we go along, and then trying to, match up our controls to the general age groups, for instance, which I think is like 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and greater than 60, if I remember correctly. I am going to, and actually I'm not gonna, yeah. All right, so this is just an overview. So I'm gonna, if you guys have any questions before we start looking at the details in the manual of operations, now we're gonna go through all of the steps to enrolling people. But please go ahead, and if you have any questions up till now, I'd be happy to address those.
Hi, Kate. This is Mary. I just wanted to be sure we all know that they can't be in the study unless they're in Project A.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So they have to first, and that's important because we don't go through all the like inclusion exclusion criteria for project. I'm not planning to go through that now. So basically, participants for both the urgency participants and the controls would have to meet the criteria for Project A and agree to do that, and then we would offer this additional project as an option for them and encourage those who would be eligible. This is a study that we can start right up front, and we think it would be ideal to do that because the trackers are new. We all have the trackers and the same ones, and they're going to be, if you wait 2 years to enroll these participants, they won't be as new, obviously. So I think now would be a great time to try to get those 25 urgency participants and then the 9 controls. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Felian at Duke. So just to be clear, the participants should wear the tracker for 2 weeks at the baseline mark and 2 weeks at the 3-month mark, but you prefer that they keep it on from the point that they start at baseline. Is that ideal?
Yeah, I think ideally they would just, wear it daily for the entire time they're in the study. Even we are actually collecting that data just passively, and we may be able to do some secondary analyses with longer term follow-up using this data. But I would say we're not focusing on that. We're kind of focusing on, and we're not asking you guys to track that in any way. We're focusing on having them wear it for those 2 weeks at baseline and then 2 weeks at 3 months. And I'll show you how we're going to record like when that 3 months happens, or Shelby will as we go through.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
And I'd just like to also clarify one more thing. So Kate mentioned that part of the compensation is the tracker. And after the study's over, they can give that to a family member. They can sell it on eBay. They can do whatever they want with it. But the important thing is we don't want them giving it to a family member in between their measurement windows. So during the whole course of the whole study, we want only the participant enrolled in the study using that tracker. So even though they're only required to wear it at baseline and 3 months, if they're one of those, the intervention group, not the intervention group, the urgency group, we don't want like their spouse or their kids wearing it in between their measurement windows because, like Kate said, we are passively tracking that data and we may find a use for it in the future in analysis. So during the course of the study, only the participant should be using the tracker. Once the study is over, they are free to do whatever they want with it. So
that's a great point. So for controls, that would happen very early because it's just a baseline visit. And as soon as they're done, they could transfer that to somebody else. And maybe, I'm going to kind of keep track. We have a Fitbit instructions page, and I noticed that the information about like how often you need to charge the device is actually not exactly accurate because we have a newer device that has a longer window for charging. Maybe this is something we could add to that Fitbit instruction sheet. While you're in the study, it's very important that nobody else wears the tracker but you, which seems like obvious to me, but might not, to the patient. So that's a good point. Any other questions before we get into the details?
Yeah, just one question, ma'am. With the baseline visit for Project A, we are kind of staggering it. The patients might do the questionnaires in the bladder diary before they come for the sample collection, like the biomarker collection. That day they might sign the consent. So how are we timing the tracker? Is it with the biomarker collection?
No, so if you can do it when they're doing their diary, I think that would be helpful, but it's not needed. The way basically the 2 weeks of baseline tracking is going to start the day you enroll them and give them the tracker. That's
Okay,
how we
so
have it set up.
Okay, so it's not related to project A, like data collection or whatever, sample collection.
No, it doesn't. Nope, it's not. It doesn't have to be related to biosamples at all. We don't have any kind of aims connecting that right now.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I am going to, let me open the, can I still share my screen? Stop. Oh, I still am sharing my screen. What are you guys seeing on my screen? This manual of operations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if I had picked a screen or a document. Okay. So this is in, and this is like version 1.3, which was the most recent one I could find. But our section really hasn't changed in these updated versions too much. So this starts on page 54 for Project C. And if you look through, we already talked about the objectives. Really the only supply that's essential is the device itself. And as you hopefully have seen, it comes with its own charger. Each device comes with a charger. Of note, if somebody asks, you can go on the Fitbit website and just order a charger. Like if they lost their charger or it broke and they want to get another one, or it's not that expensive, and they can order that separately. And then I'm gonna skip through. We already talked about this stuff. And the visit schedule in terms of wearing the tracker for 2 weeks at baseline and at 3 months, or for the controls just at baseline, and then answering the text messages. So they really have to do 2 things: wear the device for 2 weeks and answer the text messages each morning. And I'm gonna, I guess, Shelby, probably let you take over starting at the procedure details 11.5. Would that be okay? So maybe,
Yeah, I'll
Melissa?
go ahead and share my screen.
Perfect. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Are you guys able to see my screen with the manual on one side and then a website on the other side?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to kind of talk you guys just through the manual. We tried to write this as clear as possible, kind of step by step, so that if you go a couple weeks without doing it, hopefully you can come back and just follow along with the instructions. But feel free, to take notes in, ways that make more sense to you if these don't, or ask questions. I'll just kind of do a couple sections at a time, and then I'll pause for questions. Oh, it looks like we have a question from Ashley here. Can you reiterate what will happen if a participant breaks their Fitbit before completion of the study? Kate, do you have a specific protocol for that?
No, not exactly. I don't think so. What do you recommend?
What we've done in past Fitbit studies, generally we have offered one replacement device for participants if they break it. But most of the Fitbit studies I've done have been like 6 months or longer of continuous wear. So there's a lot more wear and tear on the devices, a lot more opportunity for them to get lost or broken. In this, you're really only doing 4 weeks total. So I don't know. I mean, that's quite an expense to be able to offer to each participant. It usually doesn't happen to very many people. If it actually breaks, Fitbit is really good about replacing broken Fitbits. And so what I would recommend is probably just having the participant contact Fitbit directly and see if they'll offer a replacement. They often will do that if it's something that broke. Now, if they just straight up lost it, that would be their own issue.
Yeah, I would say especially so the controls, it's only 2 weeks. I don't think we would be offering a replacement. Basically, they would have to just be done with the study, and then we would have to decide if we needed to enroll somebody else to fill in for them, and it might depend on how many days of data collection they had had. And then for the participants, certainly if they had finished, so, and Shelby, I don't even know if you realize this, but the larger protocol goes for a year. They have like remote visits at 6 and 9 months and a final visit at a year, which can be remote or in person. If they had finished their 3-month data collection, we wouldn't be, that's our primary data collection. So we would be done. We wouldn't offer additional device. I guess maybe I'll make a note that we'll have to decide if they lost their Fitbit or it broke and, sometime after baseline, but before 3 months, what to do. So that's a great question. We'll come back to that.
Okay. So in terms of before you meet with your participant, there's a few things that you're going to want to do just to save yourself and your participant some time. So what I always recommend doing is, having some Fitbits charging ahead of time. So if you can have 2 or 3 charging for each participant that's coming in, that's probably the best idea, because I'm sure you've experienced technology does not always cooperate with us. And so you may have a device that just isn't working on a specific day, or maybe it came from the company not functioning, and you could send that back and get it replaced, but you don't want to keep a participant sitting there waiting while you're playing around with a device. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a couple devices charged. And then you're also going to want to update the firmware. It's not very complicated, but I would recommend that all of you create your own Fitbit account and kind of play with these devices, before you begin enrollment. But then also, once you begin enrollment, you're going to want to hook each Fitbit up to your own account so that you can update the firmware. And it's really easy to do. You would just have the Fitbit app on your phone. You would log into it. You can click on your account icon and set up device. The Fitbit app is very intuitive. It'll just take you right through all these steps. You just choose the Inspire 2, which is the device that we're using, and then you just follow all the on-screen instructions. If there are any firmware updates that are needed, it will tell you that and it will start them for you. And so it'll just update the firmware. As these devices get fancier and fancier and have more features, these firmware updates can take longer and longer. So right now, they sometimes can take up to 30 minutes. And so you want to do that before your participant's sitting there. So you don't just have a participant sitting there staring at you for 30 minutes. It looks like if you're not comfortable using your own Fitbit account, you can just create a new fake one, set up just a new Gmail address, that you're not going to use for any personal emails, and just hook up a Fitbit account to that. So you can just always, make up just a new Gmail or whatever email account you want. Just create a new one. You might be able to even do that through your university. But Gmail works just fine and is quick and easy to do. So you just want to update that firmware before your patient is sitting there with you, or participant. And then also, before they get there, each site will have a list of accounts that we have already created for you. So you'll just get a table for your site with enough slots for participants. You'll just pick the next available slot. That will assign you a Fitbit email address and a Fitbit password. And so you will just kind of choose one and then assign it to your next participant. And you're just going to keep track of that in your data collection sheets that you're filling out. And you guys haven't received those yet, but we will send them out after this training so that each site has their correct list. Then you can actually start enrolling the participant into Boomerang, which is this website that I have open on the other half of the screen. So again, if you just start this process before your patient or participant gets there, you're going to just save them some time of just watching you click around on the screen. You could do this with them sitting there if you wanted to. But basically, you just go to this website. You can just copy and paste that, and it will take you to a website that it's actually a step before this where you actually log in. Each of you will be assigned a username and a password, and I've already created accounts for you. And at the end of this talk, I'll show you what your username and password is so that you can log in. Once you have logged in, you will see a screen like this. And each one starts with LURN, and then each site has their own kind of website. So it'll just be whatever location you are at. And that just helps us keep the patients separated. If there's an issue, it's a lot easier for us to track it down if we have separate sites for each location instead of having just one massive group. So if you're to start enrolling a new participant, you're just gonna click this green Enroll Patient button. So if we click this, you can see where it takes us, and it just prompts you for a phone number. So you're just going to enter the patient's phone number, starting with the area code. So I'll just enter my own just for demonstration. So enter that, and then click the next button. So here is where we're going to enter that email address from that chart that we're going to send you, that you're gonna, sign an email address and a password to each patient. So this is where you're gonna enter that email address. So I'll just enter my own. So we have something, preferred language should always be English for this study, only enrolling English-speaking patients. The subject identifier should be the LURN study ID that you're using for that patient. So I'm just going to make something up because I'm not actually in the study. Username should be left blank. And then you're going to choose the research team member who should be notified if for some reason this participant is struggling and sends in any kind of support message. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm one of you, so I'll just choose myself. Obviously that doesn't make sense since I'm the participant and the coordinator in this sense, but so you would choose probably yourself or someone at your site who's going to field all of these questions if participants have questions. And then the time zone, you want to make sure you get the correct one. And it's funny because people don't realize that the United States has this many time zones, but these are actually all time zones within the United States. And the reason we have so many is because of daylight savings time. Certain regions acknowledge daylight saving time and certain don't. And so we have to make sure that no matter what time of year we're doing these measurements, that we have people in the correct time zone. So I am in, or University of Iowa is in this America, Chicago. If you're not sure which time zone you're in or where your patients are, let us know and we can help you figure that out. So this is where we're going to stop. So at this point, you want to wait until until your participant is with you, because if I were to click next, that's going to trigger a text message to be sent to my participant, and I don't want that to confuse them until they're with me and I can explain to them what's going on. And again, you could just do these last couple screens when they're sitting there if you want to. It doesn't take that long. So that yeah.
I noticed there was a couple questions. I wonder if we could go back. And the first one is related to I think the firmware update. So the steps that we recommend people do before the participant arrives. Brenda says she prefers not to use her account or personal phone. How do you suggest I work around that?
Yeah, so that's where I would just create a new Gmail address or just a new email address that you can use where that's not going to have any of your personal information tied to it. So I would just create a new email address and use that just to set up your devices for the study.
But would you still have to do that on a smartphone?
So yeah, you can use your personal smartphone and download the Fitbit app, and then you would just sync that Fitbit app to this fake Gmail that you've created. If you don't want to use your smartphone, we would have to figure out, because I don't think Fitbits sync to computers anymore. They used to come with the dongle that would sync to a computer, and the new devices don't do that. So you can't update the firmware from a website anymore. So we would need some kind of smartphone.
I wonder if an iPad, if it would work with an iPad.
An iPad would work if you had like an iPad for like your department or something that you could just log in quick and update the firmware.
Okay.
So, Miss Shelley, I had a quick question. So, before our uh, this training session, I downloaded the Fitbit app on my phone. It wouldn't take my Gmail because I already had a Fitbit account. So then I created with my Not Sure account. Then it asked me my date of birth, my height, my weight, whatever. I accepted everything. Then I updated it. Then I synced it. Then it came to a main screen. So is that where I stop and then I can remove this Fitbit and then go with a new one every time a new patient is there? Is that how it works?
So the account that you're using to just to update the firmware doesn't need to have the height and the weight and all of that because you're going to actually sync it to the person's smartphone. So we just need it to update the firmware. So now that you've created that account and you've entered all of your information, you don't need to update it every time. All you need to do is just go in and sync the new device itself just to see if there is a firmware update. So you would remove the device and then add a new device. And once you get in and actually see it, it's really easy and it makes a lot of sense. But if you still have questions with it, I can always, walk through it with you on a video call,
Okay.
and we can go through it. But
Okay.
yeah,
Thank
so
you.
and then once you're with your patient or your participant, you're going to actually help them download it onto their phone and get it set up with their correct information, their birthday, their height, their weight, that stuff. So.
Right. So after you updated the firmware, you would then remove the device from your account. So it's no longer linked to your account if you want to use your personal account, or if you're using kind of account, with another Gmail address that you set up. So it's not linked to anything else. You don't use that email address anywhere else. You just remove that device after you've checked that the firmware is updated, and then it's ready to give to a participant.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. So now we'll say that, I'm sitting with my participant. We've gone through all of the things we need to. They've consented. They've agreed to participate. All of that. We're with the participant. So make sure that all of that stuff is done. Then what you're going to want to do is help them set up the Fitbit account onto their own phone. So you'll have them get their phone out, help them download the Fitbit app from the store, and kind of go through that process. So you have to make sure that the informed consent is complete. You're going to want to go through all of these enrollment forms, consent forms, to make sure that's all done. And then in those forms, it's going to ask you what time of day they would like to receive text messages. Those are going to be sent at the same time every day, so weekdays and weekends. So you want to make sure they understand that. And I can kind of show you once we get into this, entering it into the software, kind of why that's important. But you're going to want to help them set up their Fitbit account. So have them download the Fitbit app from their store for whatever phone they're using. They usually look like one of these images. Have them log into the Fitbit app on their phone using the account information that you assign to them, using the email address and the password from the list that we're going to send you. And it's the same email address that you enter over here. So that will log into the account.
Shelby, I'm sorry to interrupt too, because this is a great question. What if the patient already has a Fitbit account with their own, their personal email address and their own device?
So what we've decided to do for this study, just to not confuse things and to keep their personal data separate from the research data, is to have everyone use the device that we give them, so the Inspire 2. Just ask them to wear this for the research study. And then we're going to actually have them log out of the Fitbit app on their phone, if they already have it on there, and log in with the study account. That doesn't mean that they can't still collect their personal data if they want to. They can. They can still wear both devices if they want to, their personal device and the study device. That's up to them. But we want them to actually be logged in to the study account while they're in the study. So if they wanted to still collect their personal data, they would have to kind of log out, log back in, log out, and kind of switch between, or maybe they could use an iPad for their personal account and their phone for the study account. But during the study, we want them to agree to use our device and be logged into our Fitbit account for the duration of the study. And if that's not something they're willing to do, then this probably isn't the study for them. So
I think that's an important point, because if they're not logged in using the Gmail address and password that we are giving them, it's their agreement to send us the data is linked to that account. So if they're not logged in to that account for the duration of the study, we're not collecting their data. So that's why we have to ask them to use our device and our account for the period of time that they're in the study.
mm-hmm.
So, ma'am, for this study, I think it will be very important for the coordinators to ask the patient, sir, do you already have a Fitbit that you're using and collecting data, so we know how to prepare forward, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can ask them if they have one and if they're willing to use ours and our account for the duration of the study. And most people, I mean, I've enrolled thousands of people now to use Fitbits for research studies, and most of them are like, oh, okay, like yours is way newer and nicer than mine anyway. I'd rather wear the new one. And so most people don't have a problem with it, especially because it's a relatively short amount of time, just a couple months. And so most people don't have a problem, but if they do, then they don't have to participate. We could enroll someone else.
Right. So. And they'll still be able to see their daily steps and sleep. And so they'll still be able to see all this getting collected and track it over these 3 months. It's just that it wouldn't be in the same account as maybe previous information was. And I thought Yasmin made a nice point in the chat that in the past, she's asked patients to download the app to their phone before coming to the visit. And I think that, that makes a lot of sense if you can do that too, because it might shorten things once you're there.
Yeah, you just want to be careful doing that to make sure that you have IRB approval to do that. Because that is asking them to do some type of intervention. And if they haven't consented yet, you just want to make sure that it's okay with the IRB that you ask them to do that. So, because it is possible that for some reason they may not actually enroll in the study. They may never consent. They may see the consent form and change their mind, or don't meet some eligibility criteria or something. So we'll just want to make sure that we have IRB approval to do that. But yes, that does save a lot of time if you can do that. Or if they already have their own account and have it ready to go, all they do is log out and log in. So it's much quicker. So once you've got the app downloaded onto their phone and you logged in with the study email and password, you need to actually sync the device to their account. So you're going to help them do that using the exact same steps that you would have done to update the firmware. So you're going to click on their account icon, set up a device, scroll down to the Inspire 2, and then follow all of the on-screen instructions to enter their personal information. And it's really quick and easy usually. One thing I do want to mention also is when you guys are updating the firmware, you want to make sure you're doing that you're not sitting right next to like 6 plugged in Fitbits because it gets really confusing, and the Bluetooth on your phone or tablet, whatever you're using, gets really confused and it doesn't know which of the 6 you want to connect to. So you can have a bunch of them charging in one area, but when you're actually going to connect them and update the firmware, you might want to like go to another room or go to the other side of the room so you're not sitting right on top of a bunch of Fitbits that are all awake. Because it will be a lot harder and take a lot longer to connect to them. Okay, so now we've got the Fitbit device, we've got the Fitbit app on their phone, we're logged in, and we've got the device synced to the app. So what we're going to do is now finish enrolling them in Boomerang so that we get that data from them. So you're going to come back here to your screen, and this is where you're now going to click the next button. And this is going to ask you for 2 options. If you are with your participant in person, you want to click Go to Registration Page. If you, for some reason, have to do this virtually, then you could do Send Registration SMS. But ideally, the best option is Go to Registration Page and click Submit. And this will actually leave Boomerang and take you to a website that's actually owned by Fitbit. This is where you're going to log in with that email and password that you've assigned to them from the study. So you just type in the email that you assign them, the password you assign them, and you click login. Scroll down here. So now it gives you all of these options. So this page is just saying that Meditext2 is us. Would like the ability to access the following data from your Fitbit account. So this is where they agree to let us pull the data from this Fitbit account and use it for the research study. The pieces of data that you want to collect are activity and exercise, heart rate, sleep, Fitbit devices and settings, and profile. So you only want to check those 5. Those are what we have IRB approval to collect from their Fitbit app. So you want to kind of explain to them, those are the pieces of data that we will be collecting for the study, and then click the allow button. Oh, that probably is because I already have a bunch of Fitbits on my account. So we'll just go back. So that's what you do. You click allow. Normally it would take you right back to the home page on Boomerang. So it will take you to a screen that looks like this, and it will just say that patient with this phone number has been successfully created in the LURN study. So that's what the screen that you would get. And then you're going to go on, and we're actually going to, you would see that there's now a new patient. So I don't know if anyone saw before, but before there were only 5 patients enrolled in this study. There are now 6. And you can kind of see your enrollment bar tracks as you go along. So at this point, the participant will have received a text message on their phone from the system asking them to confirm their phone number. So it will send them a text message that looks like this. It'll just say, respond to this message with confirm to confirm your phone number in the research study. The reason we do that is because you could have accidentally made a typo when you entered the phone number. So this tells us that you got the correct phone number. So you didn't accidentally make a typo, and that this person is agreeing, to participate in this research study. And if we've accidentally sent it to the wrong person, we don't want to bombard them with messages for months that they didn't ask for, and they have no idea what they go to because they've never met us and they don't know what this research study is. And so we just want to make sure that we've got the correct person. So all that they need to do is pull out their phone and just type the word confirm. And it can be in any capitalization. It's not specific. So just have them respond to that. If they do not respond to this message, we will not get any of their data for the rest of the study, and we won't send them any of the text message prompts asking for the nightly voids. So we won't get any data from this person for the study. And again, that's just so that we're not getting information from incorrect people. So have them respond to that text message while you're there sitting with them. If you leave it till later, there's a really good chance they'll forget after they've left the appointment. They'll forget, they'll just ignore it, think it was spam, and not confirm their number. So it's really important to really try to see them do it and make sure that they confirm their number. Any other questions up until this point? No? Okay. So now what we're going to do is so we've created an account in Boomerang for the patient. Sorry, I keep interchanging between patient and participant. I work in a hospital. So you've created an account for them, and you've created a Fitbit account for them, and you have synced the Fitbit account to the Boomerang account. So we can now get data from their Fitbit. But what we want to do now is actually create subscriptions so that we can, send them reminders and send them questions via text message. So first, what you're going to do is click on the patient button. So just click on patients, and you're going to find the patient that you're working with. So I'm just working with Shelby Test right now. So you're going to click on that. And then we want to click the green Add Subscription box. And then here are all the instructions. So first, you're going to choose the Fitbit Sync, Wear, and Charge Reminder from the protocol box. So we'll choose that. And then the start date will be set to the date that you're meeting with the participant, the date you're enrolling them. So you can just click today. And then the end date is going to be the final date that the participant is scheduled to wear their Fitbit for this 2-week window. So it'd be 15 days from today. So I'm not. I'm not going to actually count it. So you would count out and figure out the correct day. So you'd pick your start date, pick your end date. The frequency should be set to 1, and it should auto-populate to that, but you want to just double check, make sure that is set to 1. So that means that our system will check if they're syncing their Fitbit, wearing their Fitbit, and charging their Fitbit every 1 day, so every day. So we want that to happen because we want to get as much data as possible. The goal reply count should stay at 0. And then we want to choose the send times. So what times, if for some reason a person isn't syncing their Fitbit, doesn't appear to be wearing their Fitbit, or they have a low battery and they haven't charged it, and we want to send them a text message reminder to do one of those 3 things, what times would we send that message? And so you want to choose generally a time in the morning, but kind of ask them for the best time for them. And it will be sent 7 days a week, weekday or weekend. Some people have very different schedules on weekdays and weekends. They like to sleep in on the weekend, or so just, get a time from them that is convenient so that you're not making them angry on a day where they can sleep in. So kind of split the difference if that's important to them. So you would just start entering your time here. Yep.
Can I ask a question? So we're going to ask them about the time they want to be asked, get the text. So that there's 2 subscriptions. This one is asking about reminders in case they're not charging or syncing. And then the second subscription is the text that they'll receive every day asking them how many times they got up to urinate during the previous night. Is it okay if those 2 times are exactly the same?
So I would advise not to make them exactly the same. I would advise to do the Fitbit sync wear charge reminder slightly earlier, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, and then do the other one 5 to 10 minutes later, because when a person responds to a text message, it gets recorded in our system. It corresponds to the last text message that we sent them. So when we're asking about those nightly voids, we want to make sure that their response gets associated with that text message. And so if for some reason they were to get a Fitbit like charge reminder, let's say they get that at 8:30, we don't also want to immediately send them the other message, because when they respond, it'll get confusing to the system of where to put that response. And so I would recommend separating them by, 10 to 15 minutes if possible. And hopefully people aren't getting these Fitbit sync wear reminders a lot. Hopefully this is a rare occurrence, because hopefully they'll just be doing it. So yeah, I would recommend a 10, 15 minute window and do the Fitbit charge sync first, and then the other one after.
And why the charge first? I'm just wondering, maybe we should just make the charge reminder at noon every day, because they don't have to respond to that necessarily. So it's less, and it doesn't necessarily have to be linked. We want the text about when they got up to urinate, hopefully to be in the morning, so that they can remember.
Yeah, you can do that. If they hadn't responded to their void question, and then this one comes in, then it would be confusing of where to associate that. So hopefully they're responding in the morning and not after. So yeah, you can make if you want to make a specific rule about the timing on these, you can. There's not a perfect way to do it, I guess. Basically, you just want to. I wouldn't send it at 2 in the morning. You're probably gonna be tangled. But yeah, you could do it in midday or evening even.
Do you think that, and if we did that, could we default it so that they wouldn't have to enter anything here?
Yeah, if we wanted to make it the same for everyone across all sites, we could just have it default entered a time here, and then we wouldn't have to enter anything.
Maybe we could do 4 p.m. their time, just so when they get home, they could charge it or something before they go to bed. But that way it'll be separated by many hours from the important text about And then you wouldn't have to enter this box. It would just be defaulted. It would be one less thing for the RCs to do.
Yeah, we can do that. So you can
Okay.
just, if you end up having to enter something, as you start typing, it narrows down your options and you can choose one. And this is what it looks like when it's selected. So if we had it pre-populated, it would just pop up like this. And then for your complete message, we want, we've updated a few things in our system since we wrote these instructions. So here I would put no message. And then you don't really need to select a person to get an end email. This is just a reminder. It's not actually getting data itself. It's just reminding them to wear, sync, and charge their Fitbit. So I wouldn't choose anyone here. And then click the green submit button. So now we've created a subscription for this participant, and this is what the subscription is. These are the dates that the subscription will be active, and this was the study that it was put into. So you just want to kind of double check that and make sure that it matches up with what you thought you were creating. Then what we have to do is actually go back and repeat the process so that we can actually ask them about their overnight. So we're going to do that exact same thing. So we're still on this patient. We're going to add a new subscription. This time, we're going to choose the nocturnal urination count. Again, the start date will just be today. The end date, you'll find the appropriate end date. Your goal reply count, again, will be set to 0. Frequency will stay at 1 because, again, we want to ask them every 1 day this question. The send time, again, is going to be a morning time that works for them to answer the question. So let's say someone wants it at 9 a.m. and choose that. This time we do want to send around, well, it's going to depend on who your participant is. If it's a control participant, you can click study complete because this is their only time that we're measuring this data. If it is one of your urgency participants, you can just click round complete because they're going to do another round of testing in 3 months. So this just sends them a text message saying, you know, you have finished this portion of the study. We'll let you know when you're starting data collection again. The actual study complete says, you know, you've completed the study, you know, and thanks them for their participation. And sometimes if people, so you just want to make sure you pick the correct one because it can confuse people if they're like, oh, I thought I had to do 3 months and it just told me I was done with the whole study. So you just want to make sure that you choose the correct one.
Shelby, I think that we will just revise the MOO to add this so that it's very clear for you guys so you don't have to remember.
Yeah, and we've just been trying to update the system to make it clearer and more efficient. And unfortunately, we'd already submitted these instructions before we made some of the updates. But yeah, we can update it and send it back out. And then you would choose however you are managing at your site. If you're going to be the one getting the emails about the participant, you would select yourself. If you're going to have some other person at your site field all the questions, you would choose them. So, and then the green submit button. And then again, you get that message at the top with who it was, what you set, which protocol you set up, the date ranges, and which study. So now we have set them up in Boomerang. We've created the 2 different subscriptions. So that's pretty much all you really need to do. This is then basically when you get to that 3-month window for the participants who are doing the 3-month data collection, you would basically just go through and repeat those instructions for that participant again. You would select the new dates, set them up in both subscriptions, and do the exact same thing. So we didn't show screenshots for it. They look exactly the same, just with different dates. And then this is just if you want to kind of track your participants, keep an eye on them, see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can do that. So again, you can click on the patients, you'll see all of your patients that are enrolled at your site. You can click on one, and then what you'll see are, so just a patient summary, their subscriptions, and their messages. So if you click on the subscriptions button, I don't have any because I just created this morning, so nothing is happening yet. And I haven't confirmed my phone number. So I did get the text message, I just didn't actually confirm it yet. So here you can see that I got the text message from the system, and this on the screen, it's showing me that I haven't confirmed it yet. And I haven't registered my Fitbit. So those would go away, those wouldn't be here. But you would see these two different subscriptions. So we have the Fitbit Sync Wear Charge Reminder, the dates that it's active and it's still ongoing. And then we have the Nocturnal Urination Count, the dates that it's active and it's still ongoing. And you can also see how many messages are remaining to be sent and all of that. So it's just kind of a good summary to see what you set them up for. So you can go back and be like, okay, did I forget to create a subscription? Did I get both subscriptions? You can check here. If you also want to see any text messages that have gone back and forth, I have a lot because I test out all of our studies. Your participants won't have, they'll just have this, it would start right here. So today's date, the time, the message the system sent me, and who the sender was. So this was the system. When they start responding back to those questions, that would be the user. So the user would be sending. So this is just old data I was testing for a different study, and I texted these values into the system. So, but again, your patients won't have been enrolled in all of these other studies. So that's how you can just kind of see, did I create the correct subscriptions? Are they set up how I think they should be? And what are the messages back and forth between the system and the person? You know, are they getting the questions and are they responding to the questions? And then you will actually also, when you have a Fitbit set up correctly in their account, you'll have another button that will say Fitbit, and it will just be right here. And if you click that, it will actually kind of show you a tracing of their Fitbit data. And you can kind of, you know, select different criteria. You can make the date ranges wider or more narrow. You can drag these bars in to kind of zoom in and out on the data. Basically, if you're seeing data, that means they're wearing their Fitbit and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We've actually, another addition we've made to the software since we wrote these instructions is to get alerts set up. Let's see if I can. So this is what the alerts look like. So we've actually created 5 different alerts for this study. And this, if for some reason your patient isn't doing any of these, it would email that support person that you selected for that patient. And so the email would look like this. It would come, the subject line would be boomerang alert. It would say the name of your study. So this would be LURN, University of Iowa. And then it would have your participant ID. Our software developer likes to get creative with his example patients. And so this is the email address the alerts would come from, the time the email was sent, and then who it was emailed to. And then it just tells you this participant, and it gives you whichever alert applies. So maybe they haven't synced their Fitbit recently. So that would just give you a heads up without you having to log in and kind of dig through their data. Or maybe they don't seem to be wearing their Fitbit. It would tell you that. They haven't responded to the last several prompts that we've asked them. Maybe they can't receive text messages because they didn't confirm their phone number at the appointment, or they don't have their Fitbit integrated correctly. And so it would just send you an email and give you a heads up, and then you could go investigate. You could contact the patient, help them follow up, you know, ask them why they're not responding, ask them why they're not wearing their Fitbit, and encourage them to do that. So hopefully that will simplify it a little bit for you so that you're not having to kind of go in and dig through the data every day to make sure people are doing what they're supposed to. So those emails will just come automatically. And then just a few other, any questions up until this point before I go through basic troubleshooting? Good so far? Okay. So just some questions, troubleshooting, things that come up in other studies. Sometimes participants will send text messages about like study procedures, or they'll be like, when's my next appointment? You know, when am I supposed to come back in for this? And it's easy for and quick for them just to kind of respond to the text messages that they're getting with the questions. If they do that, you'll get an email saying, you know, the participant sent something we weren't expecting them to send, and it will tell you what the message was. If it's something quick and easy, like let's say they've just said, when's my 3-month appointment? When do I have to come in? Or, you know, whatever the question is. If it's something simple that you can answer via text message, you can actually do it through the system. So you can open up the patient, you can go to patient actions, and you can actually send them, there'll be an option here. So I don't have it because I haven't confirmed my phone number, but this would change to send a message. So you would just click here. It would give you a box where you can type in a text message that's less than 160 characters and send it to the patient. And then it would show up in this list of text messages that have gone back and forth between the system and the user. Or you could call them and answer their question if that's easier for you. If for some reason you realize you accidentally entered their phone number incorrectly, you can come in and, you know, edit any of the patient details. So you could change the phone number. Maybe you entered the subject ID incorrectly. Maybe you want to change who the support emails are going to. Maybe you accidentally put the wrong time zone. Any of that can be updated here. If for some reason they haven't confirmed their phone number and they've deleted the text message that asked them to, you can go in and just resend that confirmation message. That would send that message again, and they could confirm their number. If for some reason a participant drops out of the study or needs to be removed for any reason, you can just remove the patient. This will not delete any previous data we've collected from the patient. It will only stop them from getting prompts to complete additional data. So it'll stop sending them text messages. It'll stop sending them the Fitbit reminders. And so it'll basically just stop their participation from that date forward, but it won't delete anything going backwards. So we'll still have their data from before they were removed from the study. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the most common troubleshooting question things that come up. If for some reason something else comes up, you're always welcome to email me and I can help you through any problems. But that's kind of the basic system. And again, we can update the instructions to be more exact with these updates that we've included in the alerts so that you'll see what those look like. The only other thing I think that I had is, so I have created accounts for everyone in this list. If we've added any extra staff, I can get them accounts. But your username is in this column. So if you want to just note what your username is, it's whoever you are in this column. And then everyone's password is identical right now. You'll want to change that the first time you log in, change it to something that you'll remember. And it's just capital B, it's boomerang12 with an exclamation mark. So you can change that when you log in. But this is your username, and then this is your password. So, and to change it, you just go up to your account and change password. So, yep, go ahead.
Did you mention for the 3-month enrollment? So for our urgency participants, we will have to go in and enroll the patient a second time for their 3-month data collection. And that is in the MOO a little further up. So when it's time, when you know when their visit will be, now they don't have to be there to do this. This is something you can do at any time. But it is important that we know what the date is for that data collection to start. And it doesn't really matter when it is. Although, we would just like the participant to know, when they need to wear those for 14 days, and they'll start getting those text messages again for 14 days about their urinations overnight. But when you enroll the patient, I think you probably, for your site, you just want to figure out a time that works best. So if the patient's coming in for a 3-month visit, and you're, they're doing things for protocol A, and you're going to have, you're going to kind of tie the 14 days to that. You can just make the 14 days start, when they're in for their visit. And you have to add those dates and create the new subscriptions in Boomerang. So again, you would have to choose the reminder subscription and the nighttime urination subscription and add the correct dates for those 14 days. And then there's also a LearnLink form for 3 months for the urgency participants. I think it just has the start date on there so that we're keeping track. It's called 3-month setup. And it's basically just confirming that you did the 3-month setup for these Project C participants and the start date, and that you went into Boomerang and set those subscriptions up.
So you don't actually need to enroll your patient again. So you would just, they'd already be enrolled as a participant. So you would just go into the patients, choose the correct person, and then you would just add 2 new subscriptions. So add the Fitbit subscription and the Nighttime Void subscription. And then when you clicked on their subscriptions, you would see these 2 original ones. They would now be completed because it's been past that 2-week window. And you'd now be, you'd have 2 new ones that would, so you'd have 4 in there total, 2 of each, with dates that are approximately 3 months apart.
And I should say maybe that as you can, the way we have our manual of operations right now is that the patient's at an in-person visit when you're enrolling them. And I think that maybe Shelby, I'll work with you to develop instructions for you can do this remotely. It just means that you have to get the device ready, and then we have to mail it to the participant, and we'd have to just have a new Fitbit instructions sheet for the participant. And then you'd have to decide how you want the patient to enroll and start once they get the device in the mail, whether you want to do it over the phone or, you could do a video visit, I guess, of something like a Skype or something too. But
yeah, it is. You can do it. It's a little bit more difficult depending on how tech savvy the person is.
Right.
But if they've already owned their own Fitbit or they have a lot of computer app experience, they usually can do it pretty quickly and easily. So, but yeah, I think the key is really just kind of logging in, enrolling yourself as a test patient, and just kind of going through the whole process. Enrolling yourself, or if you have 2 people at your site, you can practice enrolling each other, and just kind of going through it. And once you've done it a couple times, it kind of gets more intuitive and easier. And it seems like a lot of steps, but you really can do it pretty quickly once you've practiced a few times. So it's not like your participant's going to be sitting there for hours while you're clicking through screens. It can go pretty quickly if you've got your Fitbit charged and your firmware updated. You can do this all pretty quickly. So.
Could you tell us what version of the Moo you have here so that we'll know if you've updated it with the new information?
This was 1.3.
Yeah.
1.3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And will we have that new version soon, do you think?
I guess, we could certainly get this done by early next week. And then it just depends on the DCC's procedures for, circulating a new version. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, once I have the final changes from you, I can go ahead and get that out pretty quickly.
Okay, so let's say by Monday we'll have that, if not sooner.
Okay.
Ashley, is Sarah Richardson at Michigan with you? Yes. Okay. Do you have a preference for username, or do you want me just to do Sarah R, or? Oh, perfect. Okay, I can go ahead and create that account. So that should be active just a few minutes after we log off here.
Any other questions? Great. I apologize that we went over. Shelby, did you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think just, log in, try to go through the process once or twice, with yourself. You can even, if you want to enroll your spouse or your kids or someone just as practice, it's fine. Just before you start real data collection, let us know. Just shoot me an email and we'll delete out all those test patients so that you're not mixing up practice data with real data. But feel free to kind of play with the system and practice setting things up. And if you have questions or problems, shoot me an email and we can get them worked out.
Very good. I think that's it.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelby.